Okay, we are good. YouTube is going on. Zoom is happening. The mic is on.
Okay.
We are live. You are almost on screen. You are now on screen.
Okay. All right. Great.
Good luck being
Okay.
self-conscious. And welcome, everyone.
Hi. Welcome. Thanks for coming in person and on Zoom. It's been a while since we've had you here in person, so thanks for showing up. So a few things to start with. We do currently have the native sport exhibit up at the Josephy Center. It'll be up through May 11th. And there's also a drawing in conjunction with that for a beaded piece by Roger Ammerman and a photograph by Dallas Dick. For more information, you can go to our website and follow the exhibits link, native sport, and raffles at the bottom. And you can purchase tickets online or in person. And they're 1 for $25, 1 for $10, or 3 for $25. Sorry. And that's that. But okay, so today we have Robyn and Mike Burns, and they have Burns violin. Robyn is from Wallowa County. She was born and raised here and has been playing fiddle and classical music since she was 5. And Mike, I don't know his full history, but I know that he did attend a Luthier school, right? In Red Wing, Minnesota in 2007, I think. And then was working in Tacoma, Washington for a violin shop. And they started their own business in 2017. So, and then just moved back to Wallowa County a couple years ago. And I think I'm gonna let them take it from here. Thanks for coming.
Good afternoon. So I'm Robyn and this is Mike. And as Dawn nicely introduced me, yes, I grew up here and Mike is newer to here, but so far is doing well. We are going to just generally talk about our story a little bit and introduce you to what a luthier is, what it even is a luthier and what they might do. And there's some interesting things we're going to pass around, talk about some instruments. I'm going to play some different instruments and we can see if we can kind of hear some differences in how wood and age might impact the sound that comes out. What else? You're going to talk about history a little bit. If people are interested in a little bit of a tiny little history lesson on violin making and the wonderful world of violin. And then we'll play a few tunes also at the end. So if you have questions, we will definitely do that probably toward the latter part. Anyway, go ahead. Why don't you tell them about you? Tell them your story. So thank you to the Josephy Center for hosting us. We appreciate having the opportunity to kind of spread the word as we haven't been back here very long. And we're trying to let people know that if they play the violin or they know someone who plays the violin, to please either get in touch with us or come play music with us. And that.
Again, my name is Mike Burns, and I am a luthier. One of the questions I get asked a lot is, well, what is a luthier? And when people ask me, what do you do for a living? I hesitate. Do I say I'm a luthier? Do I say I'm an instrument repair person, an instrument maker? But a luthier is just literally somebody who repairs or makes stringed instruments. It's a direct translation from the French word luthier. But I specifically work on violin family instruments, so violin, viola, cello, double bass. I'm not work on fretted instruments at this time in my career. It's a whole other subset of tools and knowledge and whatnot. So I'm really concentrating on just violin family instruments. I repair them, restore them, build them from scratch. I'll show you at some point here. I've got an instrument in progress here, so you can kind of see the different steps and how it's built. And then I also have 2 here that I've made. Anyway, I think I just wanted to talk briefly about the history. I'll try to keep it brief. It's a long and varied and sometimes sordid tale of history, but stringed instruments have been around. I couldn't even tell you how long they've been around. We know of the lyre, which was played in Greece, 500 BC, and numerous instruments have been played throughout the centuries. In the early 16th century, a popular instrument was called a rebec, which was a small personal instrument. It was a bowed instrument. So that's some of the earliest bowed instruments that we know of. This later sort of transformed into a minstrel instrument, a pochette, which is a pocket fiddle, which was popular in the king's court for entertainment for the royalty. But some of the earliest known instruments that are sort of certified with dates came out of the Charles IX court in the mid 16th century. I just wanted to relay a little story about that because it's sort of fascinating. But Henry II married a wealthy woman named Catherine de Medici, had lots of money in the family. Henry died of a jousting accident from a splinter in the eye. So his son, Francis II, became king at the age of 15. He died a year later. And so Charles IX, at the age of 10, became the king. Well, Catherine, at some point here, had commissioned works of art from area artists. And Andrea Amati, who is considered the godfather of violin making, was one of those artists. And he created a set for the King Charles, and it's called the King Charles IX set. But it was pretty impressive. So from 1561 to 1568, he made 24 violins, 12 large and 12 small, 6 violas and 8 cellos just for this set for the king, which is just an amazing output for one person to make during that time period. And these were fancy. He got local area artists to paint them in gilt, gold gilt, and they all held praises to the king, and liberty and justice was inscribed in them. And of all those instruments, I think 4 are still remaining today. And you can see one of them in the Vermilion, South Dakota Music Instrument Museum. You can see the king cello, and you can go to their website and actually see it, and it's well photographed and everything. But it's really a stunning instrument. At any rate, so instruments at that time were largely for the king's court, for royalty, played privately for the king, and it went on that way for some time. But as time went on, the music started to change a little bit, right around the 1800 time frame, and so they were building concert halls, and so music was changing. It was becoming more for mass audiences. So there was some slight change in the instruments at that time. They needed to fill bigger halls and be heard for further distances to more people. So there was just some slight modifications that were made to the instrument to accommodate that, a little bit longer neck, a little bit more of a neck angle on the instrument. Just to allow for more volume and projection to be made for the bigger masses. The other thing that was interestingly happening at this time, through different revolutions, industrial revolutions and whatnot, more people were gaining employment, so they had money to spend on lessons for their children and that sort of thing. So it was just becoming more widespread. I have not mentioned Stradivari at this point. He gets all the credit and glory. But as I mentioned, Andrea Amati was making instruments over 100 years prior to Stradivari even being born. But what Stradivari did was he definitely standardized a lot of the violin measurements. So it was from that point forward that a lot of people use that as sort of the benchmark for what standardized measurements were. So this is a little bit of a smaller size instrument. This is a 7/8 size instrument, which would have been pretty popular when it, so this was based on a 1566 Andrea Amati model instrument. So at that time, people honestly were smaller. They were, and so, you know, to have a smaller size instrument like that.
Yeah, you can kind of see, and this one's oversized, so you can kind of see there's a difference between just these three instruments.
Yeah, and so these are Stradivari patterns, and this is an Amati pattern.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, you guys are welcome afterwards to pass through, look at these and inspect them. Whatever, Robyn will be playing them a little bit for you here shortly, just to hear a few differences. Anyway, that's just a brief, historical overview. Also in the 1800s, commercialization of making and more factory made, which is not really an accurate, name for it, because they're all handmade, but it may have been more of an assembly line sort of process. And
that's what mine is, and how that one.
right, and then in the early 1900s, Suzuki with Japan, and his goal was to get instruments and music into as many hands as possible, and so he actually started his own line of instruments, and they were pretty cheap and crude. A lot of these instruments were, but nonetheless, it got them into the hands of lots and lots and lots of people. Yeah. So, and now there's lots of handmade instruments. There's not nearly as much. I don't want to say that there is still commercialization, commercial instruments being made. Many of them being made in China. The heyday during the 1800s would have been Germany and France would have been doing the majority of the commercial making.
That's where this one, right? This is a French one.
So this is a French. This is sort of a fancy model French instrument with a lot of this inlay here, which is somewhat unusual. Normally you have what's called purfling on all the instruments. And this does have a little bit of purfling. It's hard to see, but on the inside it has some purfling, but this little rope edge inlay is somewhat unusual. This would have been Mirecourt, late 19th century.
And this one's comparable, but German.
And this would have been an import, a German import. I think it came through New York. This is your instrument, right?
This is
yeah. So probably in the early 20th century. There was a lot of German imports. I don't want to go down you could talk history for a
We're
long
not even
time.
talking about bows. We'll have to do another session on bows, because that's a whole nother topic.
It is. I'm just going to give you a somewhat brief overview
Okay, do you want me to play something? Or
of
you're gonna...
instruments. Yeah. If you'd like to play something, that'd be
Okay.
great. Yeah. And Robyn can kind of demonstrate some of the different tones from new instruments versus old instruments, and smaller bodied instruments are going to have its own subset of tones as well.
Yeah, so maybe let me play the same melody on these three different instruments, and just try to listen to how you might describe the differences in the tone. Okay, and I will try to play it as similarly as possible, and just kind of think about, I mean, now today we have so many instruments we have access to, right? A new instrument or an old instrument, or like the 7/8. So just be thinking about how they have, and they all, because they're made from different trees and were aged differently, they all have different voices, right? So I think I'm going to play a little bit of I've been playing lots of Argentinian tangos with one of my students recently. So I'm going to play a little bit of an Argentinian tango. I realize it's odd, but it's a lovely little melody. And then we can play some Bach or something. And then do some folk music. So, okay, so just try to listen to what the voice of the instrument sounds like. And I'll try to kind of switch quickly so you can hear that in the others. Maybe, Mike, when I go to the 7/8, would you put the shoulder rest on that?
Mm.
Okay. played it with the same bow, so that helps. Did anyone notice any color or sound differences? Do you have any words you would use to describe? So this was the second one. This was the last one. These violins are really, really different. I mean, for me as a player under my ear, they're very different. And I would imagine they would project really differently for you as well. Did anybody have any words you could think of? Yeah.
Well, the second and the third flavors came to mind, and the second one felt more honey.
Okay.
And
No problem.
the third one felt more caramel.
Ah, I love it. Well, and that's fairly, I mean, this is a new violin, right? Versus this one, that's an old violin. That was my grandfather's violin. That's an older instrument. So that kind of makes sense to me.
I thought the third one sounded brighter than the first one.
And also, to be fair, the third one has brand new strings on it, which is a whole nother thing, right? So I noticed that the third one, my instrument sounds pretty bright right now. And part of that is because on Saturday I put new strings on it, right? So they are really fresh. I definitely noticed some differences. Do you want to talk about differences before I launch into my own opinions?
So there's so many things that can affect the tone of an instrument. Just starting with the design of it.
Right, so how much arching it has?
The
I don't know if you can see
arching,
that from here.
the length of it, the width, the arching, how thick the arching is, so how thin the wood is, and that's just one thing. And then there's neck angle, there's how the bridge is cut, there's sound post placement, there's a myriad of different things that can affect the tone. And if an instrument is well made, it's usually fairly responsive, and you can kind of adjust a lot of those variable aspects to achieve certain tones.
Oh, we should have brought up violin-shaped object. So I realize these are all very nice violins, and they sound great, really. But there are what we call violin-shaped objects, which are easy to buy online, that look like a violin, sort of, but they don't sound very good, and they're really hard for the player to play. So we should have brought one of those. Anyway, I'm going to play
I try not to keep too many of those.
Yeah, we don't. Well, exactly. That's right. We're utmost in quality. This is why I love it.
Mhm. No. These, go ahead.
So as Mike was saying, these are really responsive instruments in general. This one I don't find quite as responsive as the other two. And that may have to do with how thick the wood is inside. I mean, it may be a number, how the bass bar is, just the dimensions of it. So I guess the takeaway is every instrument is really unique, particularly at a nicer level, right?
And older instruments tend to have a lot more unique voices too.
Yeah.
So when you have a symphony put together, listening to the different sounds that these came out, do they put the similar sounds together, or do
I
they
wish.
separate them?
No, we don't. So that's a great question. In a symphony, you just hope your players have the best instrument they possibly can have. So I play in the Grand Symphony right now, and I would say most symphony players are playing on very nice instruments, but no, there isn't any sort of blending in terms of, hey, what kind of strings
I
are
was
you
just wondering,
thinking?
when the directing something, they go from this group to that group, or these instruments to that instruments. It seems to me you could almost separate the three that I just listened to.
Yeah,
This sounds this way here, this sounds this way there, or maybe different parts of the piece would be played by different
and
instruments.
sometimes that does happen. And I would say too, if you go, next time you go to the Grand and go to a symphony concert, if you really watch someone, a particular player, and watch their bow, you'll be able to pick up their voice probably on their instrument at like a moment there where there aren't very many other voices going. Yeah, because they're so unique and different.
So if someone was, say, commissioning a violin, and
Which
they-
you could do.
and they knew they wanted it to sound a certain way, how would they go about describing that?
That's a great question.
That's a great question. We use a lot of these descriptive words when we're talking about different tonal qualities of an instrument.
Honey, warm, caramel, any of those are,
Um,
yeah, bright.
Reverberant, a
Right.
lot of resonance, or direct sound versus a more broad sound or a soft sound. So there's tons of different descriptive characters you can do. They might have an instrument or access to an instrument that like, I like the sound of this instrument. This is what I want it to achieve and when I, for my instrument. And then there's a myriad of things that you can do from the outline, the mold, the template that you're using, the design of the instrument, to the wood selection. For instance, a single piece back is known to be a broader, warmer tone than a quarter cut piece of wood, a quarter sawn piece of wood, which would be the grains are running perpendicular to the plane of the instrument. So there's really a lot. And then of course there's the arching and the graduations and things like that that also really affect overall tone too.
So if someone came in and said, I want something more honey sounding, you'd be able to take that through the steps of, well, it means this type of wood, this type of bridge.
Yeah, in theory, yes. Yeah, I think people that are seeking out a handmade instrument have maybe either heard that person's instruments in the past, and so they have a general idea of the flavor of that maker's tone of an instrument. And then most makers will say like, well, I'll make this where you have first dibs at the instrument, instead of a true commission, right? So it's sort of unfair to pigeonhole somebody into buying something they don't actually want.
Do you want me to do one more little demo, or do you want to chat about? Let me just play maybe a little bit of Mozart. So try to listen for clarity, I would say, clarity of notes coming out. Yeah, try to listen for how clear it sounds to you. So as you know, Mozart likes very kind of playful, short, clean, right? So we're trying to show that. Okay, so could you hear some differences, even though I was playing really short notes and trying to be pretty controlled and Mozart about it, but sort of a term, I guess. Anyway, but it's still, you could still hear some texture, right? That was unique to each instrument, which is something that's really marvelous. So as you put on your recordings or as you hear other violinists out in the community playing, do just try to think about that. What kind of tone are they creating? What kind of sound or textures or flavors are coming for you when you hear that music? Because there is such it's very dynamic, right? There's so much depth. And I also, as a player, can play really percussively or sweetly, or so there's a lot of nuance within it. Do you want to talk about?
And so the instrument is one thing, and then you can as I said, we can, influence the sound in a myriad of ways, from strings to setup.
Yeah, right, ridges.
But also, well, then there's the bow.
Right. Which we'll
And
talk
the
about another
relationship
time.
between the two is really critically important too. But then there's the
Then
player.
there's actual play.
Because an instrument in one player's hand will sound completely different in another player's
very true.
hands.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was going to talk just briefly about a little bit about what I do and the construction of instruments and what I do in my day-to-day. As I mentioned, I do restoration and repairs and new making. I do a lot of working with little tools and little, removing small amounts of wood. It's a very, very, as you can imagine, minute, detail-oriented profession. So I may, for repairs, I may push, pegs that no longer work very well. You may need to either do new pegs, or sometimes if they've gotten the holes for the peg have gotten so large, you would need to bush them first and then re-drill new holes and do new pegs in that manner. Sometimes there's cracks in instruments, and if it's worth doing the repair, that would require removal of the top to fix a repair like that. Most of the time, setups are a really big part of what I drive, because, like I said, a setup can really make or break the sound and the playability of an instrument. So it's a very difficult instrument to learn. It's a difficult instrument as it is. So if you can at least take out some of the frustrations that people might encounter when they buy these, as Robyn said, these violin-shaped objects off of Amazon or eBay or whatever. But one of my biggest struggles is reaching people before they make a purchase like that. It's one of the biggest barriers to what I do, is education to a prospective instrument buyer, because so many of them are just junk or just not set up very well, that a lot of the times the player will quit in frustration before they've even had a real fair chance of learning. So fingerboard, how that feels underneath the fingers is really important, and there's ways you can adjust that to make it really nice and easy to play. And then of course tone, and then the arching here on the bridge, how easy is that from hit to hit one string versus the other with your bow, and how it all feels with your fingers. So so setup is a big part of it. Repairs are another part of it. And then making, I'm happy to show you a few little things that I have in progress here. This is how it all starts with making an instrument. It's based around this. Well, actually, I'm going to show you this first here. These are called your templates, particularly. So I just want to show you that normally there's little pins that go here. These will line up like so. So I have this template that matches with this mold matches with this template. And so you glue these blocks of wood on independently, and then you use this to draw your corners. Okay, this is going to become your corner. Okay, and then you shape them with your gouges and that sort of thing. And then what happens after you get all that is you bend the ribs, you steam bend the ribs. This is maple here, and that's about 1 millimeter thick. It's only about 1 millimeter, and you bend that with steam and heat. And then once you get the outline, then you can start working on the rest of this. So you draw this. This is just a flat, mostly flat piece of wood that then gets drawn onto your bag. So you draw the outline, and then you create this based on this. So, and then this is all graduated by hand. I use a lot of these little tiny finger planes. Yeah. But yeah, you're welcome to pass those around and show people how that. So that mold will be removed. So that just holds the rib assembly together while I'm making the rest of it. And then once it's ready, I'll pop that mold out, before proceeding to gluing up the whole instrument.
Like the little
Can you-
cute little fingerprints.
Can you talk about the different woods you use for which parts?
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. The standard typical woods used for a violin will be the rib assembly, and the back and the neck will all be maple. And it has to be a specific density that is used. There's ways of measuring the specific gravity of the wood that you're using. People have used other woods, birch, poplar, and things like that for the backs, but really, for most professional or classical players, maple is what you would want to use. And then again, whether it's quarter sawn or a slab piece of wood will really affect the
Is this a
tone
quarter?
as well.
This is a quarter.
Yeah, that's a quartered piece of wood. And you'll see different beauty patterns or grain figures depending on which you go with. And you can see that these two instruments that I've got here are very, very different. And then the top is typically spruce. The general saying is the straighter and tighter the grain, the more uniform the sound will be and more even. And so you're typically looking at spruce that's grown in high altitude regions, southern exposure. So they can do lots of even growing. It's not, where it is down on lower level, sea level, where you got lots of fluctuations in temperature ranges and things like that. So where you'll have growth patterns that are not even, right? So you want to try to avoid that sort of thing. You can pass this around. This is a piece of spruce that will become the top of that instrument. And you can just kind of see the fine grains for that. I can see some of the tools are making their way around.
But we've got a growing set of questions from Peggy Lovegreen at the Wild Methodist Camp. And I know they have a lot of music instruments up there. I think they got a string camp. But so there's one of contact info and what do you know about the community violin players around here? Where do you go to get repairs and lessons and all that? And also, what is the price range for a violin? I guess from violin shaped object to stuff you usually
Thank you
run
for adopting that. I
into
love that.
to something at concert level.
Okay, I understood the second part. The first part was like, where do you go to be involved with community, other community?
I can talk about that in a minute.
Yeah, okay, so Robyn will address that. I can talk about costs of instruments. Yeah, so like I said, the stuff you buy on eBay or Amazon, $80, $179 or whatever, is literally just not worth your time. As you get into the probably $400 price range, it's maybe a crapshoot. Like you may end up with a decent instrument if it were set up appropriately, but you then may spend an additional $300 to get it set up appropriately, right? So I typically try to have instruments that start somewhere around $500 or $600, that will be well set up and good student instruments. And then, I'll have various, more increasingly, I'm doing more restoration work and new building. So for older instruments that have been restored, you're probably looking at, they might start at around $800 to $1,200, and then my handmade instruments are $7,500.
And Mike used to work at a very lovely violin shop in Tacoma. And there was a violin maker from California who would come up and make violins and sell them at the shop. How much were his violins? His violins are amazing. I will preface. His violins are amazing.
I believe they have a price tag somewhere around 20,000 right now.
So,
which
right, because there are plus an instrument.
Which for a reputable violin maker, that's a good wage. More typically you might see 12 to 15 for an American made handmade violin. So somebody that's had a long career of making with a lot of experience and a lot of training. He happened to train in Cremona
He's
for
amazing.
4 years, so, which is the birthplace of the violin, so.
So there's, yeah, you can buy, I mean, from less than $100 to as much as you possibly could ever want to spend. is kind of
The important
answer.
thing is that
But-
you at least consult with somebody who knows something. That's the number one step in not buying a VSO,
Yes.
a violin shaped object,
Yes.
so.
So where is your shop?
Great question.
Mhm.
Well, it's in transition, because we are in transition. We've been living at my sister's place, which is just on Airport Lane. And so that is where it is right now, but it will be on Hurricane Creek because we just bought a place there. So it will be outside of Enterprise. Yes, right outside of Enterprise. And our hope is so I teach violin, fiddle lessons, and right now I've been teaching at the Woodshed and at our home as well. And so at the new place, there's space to teach. And our front room, we're going to have dances there because I love to dance. And I love to encourage people to dance and have house concerts so I will shortly give my little spiel of music is a wonderful way to bring different people and different backgrounds and different ages into a community, right? And try to help people feel connected. And I like to do that stuff. So we are in the process of kind of making a more functional space to host and, have things like this. Or there's also a Fiddle Camp in Wallowa, which probably all of you know about. I've just taken over the director role of that. Mike and I are co-working on that together. And that's happening this summer. So if you are interested in lessons or instruments, you can contact either of us. Also the Woodshed, the Music Alliance is a wonderful resource as well for instruments because there are a number of teachers that will teach through that organization also that you're probably familiar with. So I hope that answers their question. Let me know if it does not. But yes, we have a wonderful website, Burns Violins, and there's links to all sorts of useful information. So if you know people who want to play or who are playing, who need a better violin or are just curious. We've had a lot of kids coming. They're just curious about like what you got to see today where somebody plays the same thing on a bunch of different instruments and you could hear those. And then it's really fun as a player to then do that yourself and say, oh, well, I love the way the neck on this violin feels, or no, this violin's neck is too fat. I don't like the way it feels, or they're all so unique. Yeah, it's an interesting thing. Do you want to?
Should probably play some
Let's play some tunes.
The difference between a fiddle and a violin.
Just a style.
Okay.
That's it. It's just like rock and roll and country. That's it. Yeah. So I was very fortunate. The teacher here when I was growing up, she played classical. She used kind of a hybrid Suzuki method. And then she also, because the community some number of years ago had a pretty thriving fiddle scene happening. We are trying to revive it. So please encourage youngsters to play. So we did a lot of fiddling and classical music together. So I tend to play both. A lot of violinists will just play classical music or Irish or whatever they like to do, jazz, all kinds of stuff. That's the wonderful thing about the violin. It's just like a voice. So you can use it. You can go anywhere in the world and find a way to play with someone. Enough sales pitch about the violin. Let's play some music.
Yeah.
So, what do you want?
Yeah, in the interest of time, I think we're gonna play a few tunes for you guys.
Do you want to do? Let's do that and then maybe do questions.
Yeah, that's fine. And afterwards, you all are welcome to ask questions, come up and look at stuff. I've got an interesting notebook here that I took when I made my first instrument and notes from subsequent instruments and pictures and everything about the process. So if you're geeky about the process or you want to be geeky about the process, I'm happy to talk for a long time about that.
Do you want to do them in the order we kind of?
Yeah, we'll change one. Just because of my tuning.
What are you in right now?
G, we just do.
You're normal. Okay. Okay, we're gonna play a couple downs. We're gonna play Possum Up a Gum Stump and Red Up a Rag, which are popular square dancing tunes or contest tunes. this.
Yeah, so we
Wrong
play
earrings.
for fun, for tips, for food, dances.
Wedding, playing a wedding
Weddings,
pretty soon,
right.
yeah, all that stuff.
So
We're playing, let's see, we're playing at the Lostine Tavern next month. Yeah, all kinds of, we played at M-Pro last month. I play in the symphony and the grand. We go up to the tram, yeah, we play up at the
Do
tram.
you have all that on your website?
We should.
Oh.
great idea.
Great idea, Trina, thank you.
Plug,
We should.
plug,
Are you-
plug.
Are you volunteering?
We should, because we have lots of performance days. We play up at the lodge, yes, all kinds of. Okay.
Might as well do a little more.
Well, that's
salon.
what I think.
Yeah.
What are we gonna do next? Do you want to do the little people next? Do you want to retune or not? No. Okay, so the amazing thing, I'll just do Rusty, but you just stay there. Unless you want to retune. I'll talk, you retune. Okay, so the amazing thing about the violin, as I said, it's a voice. So you can play beautiful Bach and Handel if you want, or you can play simple folk tunes, right? So we're kind of giving you the gamut of that today, right? You heard I started with an Argentinian Tango, right? And then we played some classical things and we played some fiddle things. In the fiddling world, a lot of Southern fiddlers like to retune, so you get more droning and more octaves, and you hear more overtones. So that's what I'm doing right now. Is I'm just doing a little retune, just so you can hear that as well. So this is very specific to some fiddling traditions. Okay, and so this is called Weevil. Probably all are familiar with that insect and its troubles. Weevil told his farmer, "You better treat me right. I'll eat up all your cotton, sleep in your grain beds tonight." Weevil told his farmer, "You don't need no Ford machine. I'll eat up all your cotton, can't buy no gasoline." that just gives you another example of different things. Lovely.
Like leave it to Robyn, right.
All right, we'll just play a couple more so we can save time for questions. Mike's gonna read tune. What are we singing? Oh, I'm just here to get my baby. Or do you want to do Florida Blues?
So you actually tuned your G string down.
I tuned it up.
Okay.
You can do, so what we're going to finish with a waltz where Mike's fiddle is tuned.
In it was called a cross G
Cross
tuning.
G.
I do a lot of cross tuning.
Mike
A lot,
loves cross
Appalachian
tuning.
style. You do a lot of cross tuning.
Yeah. So I tuned up to cross what was called cross D for that. This is also a D tune, but I'm going to play it in what's called standard. So classical players and many other fiddling traditions stay in what we call standard tuning, right? So G, D, A, E. That's just always how the strings will be tuned. But then we decide to monkey around with them and make things more interesting. So that's what that last one was. And we'll do another one at the end. This is Florida Blues. It's a very popular tune choice. It looks nice, doesn't it? Hold on, we are not in tune yet. This is why cross tuning is treacherous. One must be careful when one cross tunes. It's all right, you want to hear it in tune. There.
All right. I think we'll spare you the sad lament. And,
Oh, come on.
You want to sing it?
We don't have
You guys want to hear sad lament?
to. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful song. So
Beautifully said.
I really like to sing, so of course we throw in some singing. It's fun to sing. I went when I was young, and we have not gone recently. It's on our radar of places to go. And so there's that, what is it? The week earlier is kind of the old time, and then there's the following week is the contest. I would love to play in the contest. It was too much for this year, but next year. Ready? Okay.
I think so.
Going to a new key. We just have two sides. That's beautiful. Nice work. Is that it? Okay. I'm not in your town to stay, said a lady old and gray, to warden in a penitentiary. I'm not in your town to stay, and I'll soon be on my way. I'm just here to get my baby out of jail. Oh, warden, no, I want my baby out of jail. I will pawn you my watch, I will pawn you my chain, I will pawn you my gold wedding ring. I will scrub all your floors, I will wash all your doors, that I get my baby out of jail. Oh, you know I want my baby out of jail. So this warden he did say to the lady old and gray, I'll bring your darling boy to your side. With those gates flung wide apart, she held him close to her heart. She kissed her darling boy and then she died. But smiling in the arms of her dear boy, there she died. Thank you. We're going to leave you with one last tune. We're going to do a double fiddle so you can hear what that sounds like. And then if you have questions, we can take a few questions. This tune is called Margaret's Waltz. It's a fairly new waltz. All of these are that we've been playing are all traditional tunes. Oh, sorry, I thought where is your shoulder? Oh wait, it's on that one. Hold on, shoulder. I'll keep talking. It's a fairly new waltz, and I don't know if any of you are musicians, but what I'm going to do is make up a harmony part. So Mike's going to play the melody, and he's in cross. That's your yogurt, I think. There's a spoon in there. He's in a cross tuning, so he's got lots of droning options because he's got double strings. And then I'm going to play, I think we decided the harmony sounded nice, a third below. So if here's your melody line, I'm going to be playing a line a little bit below it. So you should hear some nice overtones going along. And that's what you hear when people are doing their beautiful 3-part bluegrass harmonies and all that.
Thanks for coming out.
Yeah, for the
Everybody.
first back in person.
And
yes.
I know we tried to cram a lot into an hour segment. I could have talked for a lot longer, but if you ever have any questions, we're very reachable, very approachable. I've got some business cards up here. We have a website, burnsviolins.com. You can always reach out if you'd like to know more.
Can you give us a list of those? We'll put them in the YouTube link.
Okay, that sounds good.
No. That would have been funny, but not funny.
So again, this is in a cross G tuning. So the tuning is G, D, G, D versus an open, which is an open tuning. So it's neat because you can play the melody. If you can play it on your top 2 strings, you can also just reach over and play the same fingering on your lower 2 strings, and then you'll have the same melody. So, okay, Margaret's Waltz. How's the song?
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank
Do you
you
have
all.
questions? You have
Questions, please.
any questions? Corey?
Well, this is sort of cross instrumental, but what's the relationship in the tuning between your violin and mandolin? Are they the same tunings?
They are.
Essentially, so.
So the fingerings they lay out the same way.
Yeah.
With the mandolin, it's just all about getting that right hand tremolo. But same can be said for violin as well. It's all about the bowing, right? Or particularly fiddle. Right.
Don't wear big earrings, ladies.
Or men.
Or men. That's true, actually. Lots of men wear big earrings too.
Yeah.
Any other question? Yeah, well, if you want to come up and look at things, that
Yeah,
would be
you're
fun.
welcome to come up here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was lovely and informative and yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks for inviting us.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for coming. Donna, you did an amazing job. Thank you for coming.
Good job,
So
She knows
I've been
she's
using
doing
Logic Native.
She writes the.
Yes,
I was living over
Yes.
there. So I got a lot of
She does. She's
like
doing
that
both.
instrument there. The back is made from Port Orchard, big leaf maple. Some people don't like it. They don't think it's crisp enough or projecting enough. I like it. You know, as a fiddler, it's a little softer sounding, more warmth
I was
to
gonna
it.
say.
This
I'm
is
in
another one that
between
came from the Shelton area. This is also big
right?
leaf.
Because
Patterns in here. This was some wormwood damage. And you can see I'm not filling it, but I
Yeah, I graduated.
still